point about wherever users are, injecting help so that they can quickly find out, what is this thing? How do I take advantage of it? Because as intuitive as it is to many of us, we're actually continually surprised how unintuitive it is to the average non-technical user. It's really surprising to me, but it is what it is, and so we're investing in that kind of quality, or that help, embedded help.
And it's very important because, as I mentioned, we have a pilot site that we have out right now. And if I can get to it, did you re-plug? Do I need to plug back in again?
Just, yeah, go, well, no, just push the button, like turn computer.
So as I mentioned, we had a pilot site, which is our alumni site. So going from what we have kind of existing look.
And it's not that black, by the way. I don't know what's going on with that. Actually, real content there.
But as you can see, they're completely different look and feels. And one of the big things that we wanted to do was differentiate ourselves, be leading edge and examples for other school of medicines to emulate or strive towards. So we really want to lead the way in what School of Medicine sites can function as and can look like. And this is a pilot site that we just finished up with, and it's got a lot more of a bold feel. It uses our Stanford colors, and
it's all screwed up on that browser. I don't know, wrapping text.
Yeah, it's probably
Stanford Medicine.
Well,
it's IE.
Yes.
Well, we're supposed to support it.
Yeah,
So,
and that's actually a very good point, that we actually have this in IE, because one of the things that we have found out from a viewing perspective and from an authoring perspective is IE has issues.
Oh, really? I
Yes.
haven't noticed.
For whatever reason.
First time you're hearing this.
what?
So we all know that we all know that one. So obviously for our web authors, that's one of the things we've had to tell them is don't do any of your edits in IE. And I actually made that mistake when I first started editing in the environment. Was I was using IE and bouncing back to Chrome. And finally it was IE is just too much of a pain in the butt, so stick with Chrome, because it just does not function and do the experience the way that me as a technical person expects it to. And then I can only imagine the experience that my authors are going to have, which can completely turn them off, and that's something that we don't want to do. But I mentioned this idea. So we can look at the page. We've got a photo banner gallery at the top. And I mentioned the idea of featured components, so these featured events. So this is one of the components that we actually customized for this particular site. And that's going to be reused throughout a lot of our sites. And this was one of the test cases, and kind of get into some of the negatives that we've experienced, because again, this was a pilot site that we were putting into place, and we're now going back in and seeing some things that don't quite work right, or from my side of the fence, the web authors go, I don't really know what this is supposed to do, I don't understand, but they've been trained on it. But it's that training, I don't use it for months, now I need to go back and learn how to do it. And as I said, this is a pilot site, so a lot of the things that we're looking to do for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, as I mentioned, the inline health, unfortunately, this particular site does not have that built in at this moment. So that's one of the things that, yes?
Just, there are several questions in my mind, just I'll ask one related to this one right now. So there are usually, those sites, I'm assuming, already existed, the ones that you're migrating to see. Is that correct?
The sites that we do have will be migrating to CQ. This site right here, while the content was there, this was a complete redesign.
So the question was, are you also willing to change the design on those existing sites so that they fit your 20 components? I mean, is that, because the only reason you would like to have more and more components is to make sure the site looks good, it looks neat and clean, everything is picture perfect. And you may have to add, for a little thing, you have to add another component. That's the only reason the list becomes 120 or something like that.
Right.
So you limit the templates, but components can grow longer because you're trying to make sure that the original design, which went through a lot of QA cycles and everything, was approved, and all that stuff is imitable. It is imitated. I mean,
right.
So
it's a very good question. So we're going with new templates, new themes, new look and feel for all of our sites.
okay.
And one of the things as part of the migration is we're migrating the content in, and we're giving and kind of promoting the idea of this is your opportunity to advance your site, to add more images to it, to add more functionality to it. Take your content that you haven't updated in the last 6 months. And it's a revitalization and a reimagination of our web world. Because as I mentioned, 90% of our sites are really content. So it might be one column with a bunch of text and maybe an inline image. So that's a text editor and an image component for lots of sites.
So there is no design team that approves it, says it looks good, all good, beautiful, tick, done. I mean, there is usually a separate group, completely user experience group, QA group, whatever, that says I like it. I mean,
We've been working with the community, so all of the comps that have been done have been passed through, whether they're acceptable or not. So it's not, if you think we are forcing kind of this new template, new environment on people. There's been lots of vetting across the board, lots of feedback. Images is a good example for the logo, lots of feedback with that. Fonts, colors, placement of how pages are going to look. So it's not that it's being forced, it's getting lots of feedback. Now within certain parameters, people are going to have to design within the templates, within the structure, but that meets 90% of the needs of a lot of our sites. You had a question back there?
I had a question. What was the environment of the existing sites? Are they all in one, technology, or were they?
It's Dreamweaver contributed.
Oh, okay.
And we do have WordPress sites that are out there, but really our environment is Dreamweaver and contribute is what it is.
We're going to have 2 models for migration of 800 sites. One is, and each will go through a life cycle that does include QAs. So we're going to have an assisted, so I'm spreading some of this stuff now. They can opt into having assistants, meaning that we'll look at their site, we may do some automation, do 80/20, and help them get everything fixed and moved around. And that'll be high touch for maybe 40 to 50 sites that are large departments. And then at some point, they, as the client, will sign off, okay, this is good, and we say, yeah, we agree. So that'll be a high touch, almost consulting effort. Then we will have in the middle of the summer, we're gonna talk about this at Summit actually, create a provisioning system where people can sign up for self-migration provision sites, and they can copy and paste all day long and move it in and use the components and rebuild from scratch with their content or new content, whatever they want to do. And then they'll tell us when they're done, and we'll turn off their old site and point to DNS. So we'll have both models, frankly.
So how long does it take for you? So when you say a site, what does the site mean, and how, there is also a lot of infrastructure work related work that you need to do when you release a site, right? So the URL of the site being one, I mean, maybe you will reuse the same URL that you're already having, but still there is work to be done for the web server, for the resources on a bunch of things that you have to do on when you release a site. So even if you don't have any work, let's say you restricted the work for developers,
Right.
that there is no template development, there is no component development, it's only content, and my authors will come create the content, I'll publish it. But when I publish it, I still have to, releasing of the site involves a bunch of other activity, right? Is that been any pain for you, or any experience that you?
We haven't, well, yeah, when we went live with this, there was a lot of surprises because we're having to route, our primary domains are still routed here. And we had all these things that were colliding with things here. So the day we were going live, we were opening up proxies and doing all kinds of stuff. I think we've worked out what we need to watch for. I think what we're doing, we're thinking about, again, some manual and automation combination where if someone is going to activate a site for the first time, if we can trap that event, we can start a workflow that triggers communications around to various people. And then there's manual work to do, like switching DNS, like double checking the certs are working, and all the proxies are open to the right place. So I think we'll create this checklist. If we can automate it through some workflow, we will. If not, we may just not allow anyone to activate, and somewhere on the welcome.html page, I'm ready, click here, and that triggers and emails around to start the workflow of getting that working. So we'll figure out, we haven't figured that all out, but that's kind of our thinking right now.
Are you planning to use one kind of instance of CQ to host all those 800 sites, or each site having its own?
No, these are mostly, out of the 800 sites, most of them are very low traffic. I mean, it's just this wide, long tail
Couple
thing.
of pages, so
Oh.
bandwidth for that is relatively.
Well, some of these sites are hundreds and hundreds of pages,
Right.
and then there's very small sites and everything in between. What our current structure is: one author, and that may change, two production or publish, and then two dispatchers, and then we'll just add dispatchers as needed, basically, and then we'll load balance that front end. So that's kind of, and that'll all be done in Amazon right now. That's kind of what we're thinking.
So,
If it-
are you planning to scale? I guess, how are you planning to scale up the infrastructure in terms of like server boxes and stuff like that? Or are you planning to have the author, the two publish, and then scaling the dispatchers support all 800 sites? Like, do you see that as?
The traffic, it should. We get only 4 million page views a month. So if we need to add load balancing or dispatchers and load balance that, I think that's not an issue. I'm most worried about the authoring. 900 authors, how many of them are going to be concurrent? Well, probably more than 20, maybe 40,
I was
50.
wondering about that.
So somehow,
That freaks me out.
so we're going to have to have some kind of way of dealing with author instances. That's my main concern.
Are you guys? So is there just a whole bunch of dispatcher caching going on because you mentioned scaling the dispatcher side, depending on how many page views you get. Because, for example, for our infrastructure, we have 2 publish servers, 2 dispatchers, or 2 publish servers, and then a couple web servers with dispatcher on them, and then a load balancer above that. But I don't think that we hit anywhere near 4 million page views a month at this time. But we saw like uptake, and depending on how much happens in your CQ server, a lot of issues in terms of load times based on going back into the publish server and coming back. So are you guys just implementing caching right off the bat, or?
Yeah, caching, dispatcher will be fully cached, and probably we have scripts that once we activate, it will basically, there will be a script that goes through and spiders the site so everything gets cached. So even the first time user, unless they beat our spider, will have a cached experience. And this is the beauty of having a non-commercial type of site is, like Jason said, it's a lot of static stuff at the end of the day. And so it's easy to cache. And so we'll wait until our friends at Adobe fix up, user-generated content stuff. And that's something we're looking forward to, because we don't have a lot of that right now.
What about rich media? You guys, in terms of, some of the things we've seen is, the author's doing a lot on with the DAM and resizing, and if somebody uploads a 50 gigabyte video video? Are you hosting video?
So it's actually a very good question. So they are not uploading any video within the CQ environment.
Yeah.
We have Cultura, which is third-party hosted, that all our videos are uploaded into Cultura.
It may temporarily store it, but so the whole experience of uploading and using video will be kind of like using Scene 7, we'll fully integrate it, but it's not going to be hosted or rendered or transcoded there.
Right.
For large images, this is an infrastructure question we have yet to solve, but our current plan is probably to just offload that job and put it onto a separate instance for the dam. Because anybody could kill our whole authoring experience if it was a part of the authoring.
We've seen that with clients where like somebody uploads a 50 gigabyte video from a conference and it just gets stuck in the queue.
Yeah. We for us it's taking a conference 100 images and still could be a problem for rendering a lot of sizes. So.